My name is Sarah Mitchell. I'm 38 years old. I'm a high school teacher in Spokane, Washington, and I died. Yes, you heard that right. My heart stopped for exactly 7 minutes inside the Sacred Heart Hospital after a severe allergic reaction that evolved into a cardiorespiratory arrest. Outside, doctors were racing against time. But on the inside, I was no longer here. It was in this interval between life and death that Jesus revealed to me a devastating and at the same time liberating truth. The truth about the church, something no one knew before. If you believe you've seen it all, I ask you, stay with me until the end of this story, because what I'm going to tell you can change your faith forever. Before that day, my life was exactly what you expect from an ordinary woman. I woke up early, made coffee, corrected tests, dedicated myself to my students, and on Sundays, as a good Christian, I went to church. A large modern church full of young people, lights, and beautiful words. I sang, raised my hands, smiled. But inside, there was something I couldn't name. It was as if I was present but disconnected. As if my heart beats to the rhythm of routine, but not to the rhythm of God's presence. I confess, I did everything right on the outside. But inside, my faith was dormant, and it was when everything seemed under control that the unexpected tore me off the floor of life. It was an ordinary Monday morning. I was at school, in the classroom, taking an American literature test. Everything seemed normal until I started to feel a strange itch in my throat. Then came the dizziness, the cold sweat, and an unbearable pressure in the chest. I tried to stay calm, took a deep breath, but within seconds my body started to tingle. My eyes closed, and the sound around me was muffled, as if the world is diving underwater. When I woke up again, I was no longer there. He felt no pain. He no longer heard human voices. All was silent. Absolute silence. I could see the white ceiling of the hospital from above. Yes, I saw myself lying there with nurses. Running, a doctor pressing into my chest and screaming, "She has no pulse!" But the scariest thing was not the sight of my body. It was the inexplicable peace that enveloped me. There was no fear. There was no despair. Just a soft feeling, as if someone was hugging me from the inside. And then, a light appeared in the distance, approaching steadily but unhurriedly. She wasn't just light. She was life, truth, and pure love. Deep in my soul, I knew. It was him. The moment I found myself out of the body was like waking up from a dream. But contrary to what many think, it was not a dream. It was more real than anything I've ever experienced. As I watched my body being reanimated, a question shot through me like an arrow. If I'm not that body, so who am I really? And it was at that moment that I started to be pulled, as if an invisible hand led me through a tunnel, made of living light. It wasn't white. It was made of colors that I had never seen on Earth. It was hot, but it didn't burn. It was clear, but it didn't hurt the eyes. Time seemed suspended. The mind was at peace. My heart was preparing for the most powerful encounter of my existence. I knew I was getting closer to something eternal. Suddenly, everything stopped. And before me, a colossal presence of light revealed itself. There was no physical face, but I could feel it was Jesus. As soon as the light went out, everything was serene. And it was there, in the midst of that heavenly space, that Jesus appeared, before me. Not with an ordinary human appearance, but shrouded in glory with a light that did not dazzle but purify. Your eyes, I cannot describe it with words from earth. They pierced me with love, truth, and an authority that made me tremble. Not of fear, but of reverence. It was as if every cell of my being recognized. You stand before your Creator. He did not call me by my baptismal name. He called me by a name that only he and I knew. A name that made me cry without being able to control it. There, I understood what it is to be known in its entirety and yet be loved deeply. Jesus did not speak with his mouth. His words came straight to my spirit. And what he said to me, I will never forget. My daughter, what they call my church, it is no longer mine in many places. I trembled inside. What do you mean, Lord? I thought. And he just looked at me with compassion, like a father who shows his son the truth he never wanted to see. Jesus then asked me something that undid all the certainties I thought I had. Why did you adore me? With the body present, but the heart absent? I tried to answer. I tried to explain. I tried to justify it with the routine, the distractions, the tiredness of the week. But before him, there were no excuses, because there were no masks there. There was no stage. There was no mechanical worship. There was only truth before truth. Then he said, "Many go to temples to meet, but they do not find me, because the focus is no longer on me." It became a spectacle. It was at that moment that he began to show me things that, to this day, they take my breath away. The voice of Jesus, as sweet and at the same time firm as gentle thunder, echoed within me with a clarity that made me shudder. "The church that you have built, it's not mine." I felt as if my heart was torn in silence. How so? I thought. And Jesus continued. "They built imposing temples, but they forgot the altar of the heart. They preach my name, but they do not live my love. They speak of the cross, but they avoid sacrifice." At that moment, a series of visions began to pass before me, as if I were watching a revelation in real time. It was as if heaven opened hidden, files showing what was really going on behind the curtains of the pulpits. I saw churches full, but with empty hearts. I saw leaders applauded, but they no longer listened to me. I saw illuminated stages, but without my light. And Jesus said, "My church is not a building of stone and concrete. My church lives where 2 or 3 come together, in my name, with surrendered hearts, with broken spirits, and truth within." It was there that I understood. The structure can be beautiful, but if the center is not Christ, it is only a hollow monument. Jesus then showed me people who were in the services, smiling, singing, preaching, but with faces covered by invisible masks. Masks of religiosity, masks of false holiness, convenience, masks. He told me, "They learn to look spiritual, but they have unlearned to seek me in secret." I saw tired pastors trying to please crowds. I saw musicians playing with excellence, but with their souls far from Deus. VI members seeking status. Within the church vying for positions, as if the kingdom were a company. All of this cut me inside. Because that was exactly where I was too. And Jesus, with a serene pain in his eyes, concluded, "I look at hearts, and there are many who say, 'Lord, Lord,' but they do not know me." After showing the masks, Jesus led me to another vision. It was as if I was flying over several churches around the world, and in many of them I saw spiritual stalls, like fairs, where faith was exchanged for goods, promises for money, salvation, for influence. Jesus said to me sadly, "You have turned my house of prayer into a marketplace of interests." I saw leaders selling special blessings, VIP prayers, anointed objects. I saw desperate multitudes seeking miracles, but not me. People trying to buy cures, but without surrendering. It was a gospel without a cross, a faith without renunciation. A Christ domesticated to fit human preferences. Jesus spoke in a voice of pain. "They quote me, but they do not follow me. They talk about prosperity, but they do not speak of repentance. They teach formulas, but they forget the Spirit." And then he showed me the faces of wounded people. People who entered churches seeking salvation, but they left with more guilt, more emptiness, and more fear. Because they did not find the true gospel, but rather a doctored version of it. Jesus ended that vision by saying, "The truth that sets you free has been exchanged for messages that please. But I have not come to please. I came to transform." And there, for the first time since my clinical death, I cried. I cried not for myself, but for everyone who, like me, had been lost inside the church. Jesus led me to a place that looked like a photo gallery. In it, there were very familiar faces, famous religious leaders, influential pastors, apostles, bishops, prophets, men and women who filled stadiums, who had millions of followers, who were treated like celebrities. And then Jesus said something to me that made my spirit tremble. Not everyone who is great in the eyes of the world is great in mine. I saw two worlds happening at the same time. On earth, these leaders were surrounded by applause, spotlight, titles, and riches. But in the spiritual, many were alone, empty and disconnected from me. Jesus showed me that some had started well, with sincere hearts, but lost themselves in vanity, power, greed. Others had already started with ulterior motives, using God's name as a ladder to achieve fame and influence. I've seen leadership meetings where the focus wasn't prayer, but marketing. It was not seeking presence, but plan launches, events, products, collections. Jesus, with a firm look, said to me, "They talk about me, but they left me outside. They built empires with my name, but they cast out my spirit." However, right there, he showed me something different. Small churches, no famous plaques, simple men, women invisible to the eyes of the media, but filled with the presence of God. Jesus pointed to them and said, "These are mine, because they don't seek greatness, seek me." It was then that I understood. The true anointing does not make noise, and true authority doesn't come from the stage. It comes from the secret altar. After showing me everything that was corrupted, I thought there was nothing left. But Jesus, with his incomparable tenderness, said to me, "There is still a remnant. I still have homes where I am worshipped in spirit and in truth." It was then that a new vision opened up. I saw simple houses, small sheds, unsophisticated halls, places where the seats were worn, the instruments out of tune, and the walls unfinished. But the air was impregnated with the presence of God. There I saw people crying on their knees. I saw leaders washing each other's feet. I saw children loving it with their eyes closed. I saw prayers without haste, without a script, without vanity. And then Jesus smiled, a smile that seemed to light up the whole sky. "These know me. These hear me. These do not need fame, because they already have my favor." He continued, "My church is not the richest, nor the most followed. She is the most obedient. She is the one who stands firm even without applause. She is the one who awaits me, even when the whole world runs away from me." I then saw secret meetings in persecuted lands, where Christians worshipped in a whisper. I saw meetings in favelas, in basements, in mountains. And in each of these places, the glory of the Lord dwelt. Jesus looked at me and said with shining eyes, "These will be mine to the end. They will hear the trumpet blast and go up to me." It was the first time in the whole experience that my heart was filled with hope, because I understand, all is not lost. There is still a living church, invisible to human eyes, but visible to heaven. Jesus then said to me, "My church's biggest mistake today is to confuse religion with relationship." At this moment, I was led to a vision where two roads opened up before me, but the paths were completely different. In the first, I saw people trapped in human rituals, rules, traditions. Everything was done to perfection: liturgy, costumes, schedules, etiquette. But their faces were empty, cold, tired. Jesus explained to me, "This is religion, an attempt to get closer to me, without listening to me." On the other side, I saw a smaller group. No stage, no program. Some were sitting in silence, others were crying, others were singing softly. But everyone had their eyes fixed on something invisible, but real. There was life. There was a connection. It was as if each breath was a conversation with the Spirit. "This," said Jesus, "is the essence of relationship." Religion quotes me, relationship. Listen to me. Religion sings to me. Relationship feels me. Religion studies me. Relationship obeys me. And then he asked me a question that echoes in me to this day. You followed me, or did he follow the system? It was impossible not to cry, because at that moment, I realized how many times I myself was religious, thinking that I was right with God because I was active, involved, visible. But my intimacy with him was cracked. I spoke of him, but I did not speak to him. And Jesus concluded, "My fiancé will not be religious. It will be intimate. She will desire me as a bride desires the bridegroom. She will love me above all." Jesus reached out his hand and, as if opening an invisible curtain, showed me several churches around the world. They were architecturally perfect, majestic speakers, impeccable lighting, state-of-the-art screens, powerful sounds, padded chairs. But something shocked me. There was no one in them. They were completely empty, not on the outside, but on the inside. There were people sitting, but spiritually, they were not there. Some looked at the clock, others played with their cell phones. Others just attended, but their hearts were elsewhere. Jesus then told me something direct. These churches are full of human presence, but void of my glory. And it showed me something even more painful. I saw leaders at the altar looking at the audience for approval. His prayers had more eloquence than sincerity. His words came more from the intellect than from the spirit. And the saddest thing, I saw crowds leaving the church the same way they entered. Because no one was really touched. Because I was not sought. Jesus looked at me and said, "They build to exalt themselves. My temples have become mirrors where they only see themselves. The altar became a stage, the cross became a logo, and the glory, it became a performance." He showed me people who fasted just to show off, who posted pictures of the Bible as if it were a trophy, who measured their faith by the number of followers. But their hearts were full of vanity. They say they love me, but they love the ministry more than me. That cut me inside, because I saw faces I knew. I saw parts of myself there. And once again, Jesus spoke with tears in his eyes. "I want to dwell again in the midst of my people, but I do not share my glory with pride." After the darkness came the promise. Jesus led me to a spiritual hill where, in the distance, I saw small points of light emerging around the world. They were young people, children, anonymous, unlikely people, but with my heart completely surrendered to him. They were not concerned with titles, positions, appearance, or prestige. They were in love with Jesus. I saw teenagers gathering in silence to pray in schools. I saw musicians composing secret songs in their bedrooms, which made the sky move. I saw simple women praying at dawn, moving the world with their hidden faith. And then Jesus smiled again. A smile that wasn't just one of tenderness. It was one of hope. I'm raising a new generation, not linked to religion, but in my presence. They will not bend to the system. They will not seek applause. They will worship me, in spirit and in truth. He showed me a little girl praying alone in the backyard of a humble house. And he said, "What this girl gives me, it is worth more than 1,000 heartless tune choirs. I have seen a generation of men and women who will not settle for the superficial, who will seek intimacy, truth, holiness, people who will be more interested in hearing God's voice than in microphones." And he declared, "My glory shall be poured out, not on the famous, but on the broken." There, I understood. God is doing something new, out of the spotlight, away from the stage, inside the closed rooms, and the question came straight from Christ's heart to mine. Do you want to be a part of this? After everything I saw, heard, and felt, I felt small, but strangely strong. It was as if every cell of my spirit had been ignited by the presence of Jesus. I didn't want to go back. I wanted to stay there, in that place where there was no pain, no hurry, no comparison, no fear. But then Jesus said to me with tenderness and authority, "It's not time yet. You need to tell the world. Take this message, even if they don't, believe it. Even if they mock, even if they reject it, I'll be with you." It was then that he approached and touched my face with the light of his hand. At that moment, I was thrown back with force into the body. I woke up with a fright, in the ICU bed of the Sacred Heart Hospital. There were tubes, nurses around me, monitors beeping, but I didn't see any of that clearly. I just cried. He cried for everything he had seen. I cried for having returned. I cried because I knew that the world was still blind, and that now I was carrying a mission. In the following days, the doctors called me a miracle. They said that I had returned against all expectations. But the real miracle was what happened inside me. I was no longer the same. I could no longer attend church in the same way. She could no longer sing with her lips and remain neutral with her heart. Everything in me screamed for truth, by real presence, out of regret. And there began my new calling. Not as a pastor, not as a preacher, but as a living witness of what Jesus revealed beyond life. Back in my body, during my recovery in the hospital, Jesus continued to speak to me, now in prayers, in tears, in moments of deep silence. And it was on one of these early mornings as I looked at the white ceiling and felt his presence envelop me again, that he made me hear his voice once again. Say to my people, return to your first love before it's too late. At that time, I saw familiar faces again. I saw crowded churches with distracted hearts. I saw young people who once burned for God, now cold, consumed by entertainment and vanity. I saw leaders who used to cry at the altar, now concerned with likes and reputation. And then Jesus said firmly, I am calling my people to repentance. I am shaking structures, removing idols, purifying the bride, because time is running out. He showed me the sky clock, and the hands were seconds from midnight. Go back to the secret. Go back to the cross. Go back to the place where you first heard me. My glory will be poured out on broken hearts, not on proud altars. And then he was silent, but his presence remained, engraved on me like fire in my chest.